Welcome everyone. Will is here once again. Will, hello.
Hi Joe.
And back from Augusta, Conor McKeon. Hey.
Hi Joe.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Very well. A lot to get through today. We will touch on your experience, don't worry. Very generously brought me back an official Masters ball marker as a present.
Yeah.
Touch of class there.
The queues for the gift shop were, I think at their shortest they were about 40 minutes. At their longest they looked to be about 2 hours. So that's what you're dealing with.
Yeah.
Where's my present? I've known you a lot longer than Joe.
You're not a golfing man though. What would you do with a ball marker?
Yeah.
And I'll admire it.
Well, on that, and sorry, I really appreciate it. It's disappointing.
Yeah.
Isn't it? The Open ones are beautiful. And the Irish Open ones are very nice. If you had told me now that you weren't arsed queuing up at the official merchandise shop and had bought this from John Daly's thing outside, I'd believe you. It's a little bit average as a ball marker.
I don't know. I just anything with that kind of logo on it now. I think you kind of get away with anything. The hot ticket were the Garden Gnomes. So the gift shop opens at 7, and by 9 o'clock they're out of Garden Gnomes. They fly off the shelves.
I've heard that, yeah.
So I came home with 0 Garden Gnomes
And a lot of ball markers. I just think it would be better just cleaner, just with the logo and white all around it. The Open do them very well. Sorry, I like it. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, it's a pleasure, Joe.
Funny, he never got me a present after that. Again. So, housekeeping very, very quickly. Indosport podcast at independent.ie is where you can send in the emails. The avalanche of Rory emails keep coming in. We were down in Langton's yesterday with Eddie Brennan and Michael Verney and John Milan. We had to break it into 2 parts. Part 2 is out today. It culminates beautifully with the story of Cyril Farrell almost dying, having a spicy Mongolian beef at RTE. I think at one point Des Cahill shouts to Ken McGrath, who had ordered it for everyone, or certainly for him and Cyril, "What have you done?" World Championships are on snooker. We recorded Ken Doherty today. It's out tomorrow. So good. Honestly, so good. Even if you have a passing interest in snooker, I would recommend that tomorrow. And GA football, we've neglected football a little bit this week. The Indo GA feed with Michael Verney, Pat Spillane, Dick Clerkin have got you covered. It's kind of an interesting-ish weekend in the football, I would say. So Cork Kerry in Munster, Clare Tip as well. In Connacht, Leitrim Mayo, but Roscommon Galway on Sunday, 4 o'clock in RTE, interesting. And then in Ulster, we'll see Donegal again against Monaghan Clonus. Oh, it's okay. After Augusta.
Well, I've already seen New York in the flesh, or I've already seen Galway in the flesh once this year, so I can attest to the fact that they're going well. But just on that, in a weird way, for all the flaws in both the structure of the football and the hurling, it does work well, insofar as I think all of us only have enough bandwidth for so much sport, and when the provincial hurling championships are on, they are absolute blockbuster, and the exact opposite can be said of the football championship. Yeah. Then I think it probably switches over for a small little part of the season, so it kind of does work well in a way.
With like no planning,
completely
no
unintended
strategy. The round robin in the hurling only brought in because they were bringing in the Super 8s in football, and geez, we better do something, but they have managed to kind of fold around each other. Yeah,
it actually works really, really well, unintendedly.
Yeah, 7 sellouts for the at this stage already for the Munster round robin. I think Semple's obviously 55,000 hard to fill, but the rest are all can't get tickets. So lots of hurling to keep you covered, and we'll get back to the football next week as well. Rugby, Will. I mean, it's rare you get like, geez, I hadn't heard a whisper of that news. It was exciting when that kind of thing happens. So we have a few things. Bear with us a moment here, will you?
I'm delighted that he comes back from Augusta.
I know.
He sit there and listen to this, and I don't want to peep out of you for the next 5 minutes.
When are we naming the Lion squad?
Well, I mean, the bench split on the lines is going to be fascinating. We'll get to that.
Yeah. We got an email in about a GA bench split that we can save maybe for another time.
We've crossed the Rubicon.
Johnny Sexton is now a full-time coach. British and Irish Lions, part of the coaching ticket, and then IRFU confirmed that Johnny Sexton will be a full-time expanded coaching role, which includes Andy Farrell's Ireland, but also teams of other age grades, right across the board. He's going to work with future players, current players. So it's happened. He's come in from the cold, as we knew he would. I did that thing with him at the Board Gosh's book launch, And there was a 5-minute exchange of me saying, there's not a chance. There's not a chance you're going to stick this office business. He said, no, I will. Honestly, I will. We wait and you see. I said, okay. And everyone was laughing. They knew which way this was going to go. And so it's gone that way. It's great, isn't it?
I'm fascinated to hear how it evolved because, as you say, at that stage he wasn't doing any coaching. There was a little bit of a groundswell when Stuart Lancaster was moving on and Sexton was retiring. Maybe should he go into Leinster in some sort of attack coach role that Andrew Goodman then stepped up. But then obviously he went into Ireland camp initially very hush-hush. He was working with the kickers only. Then it progressed a little more, a couple more days a week. Then he was at the pre-training camp in Portugal ahead of the Six Nations. And by the end of it, he was in the coach's box. So clearly, as the tournament progressed, and while there was a bit of an absence with Andy Farrell gone, he either got the bug more or he was having more influence or they certainly want him around more. And now it's culminating with him not only going on the Leinster tour, but going in full time. It's extremely fascinating. And I'm still a bit... For a guy who exerted so much influence as a player, where players were kind of looking to him at every instance, I'm still curious as to him as the coach and being in that environment and what that looks like for the leaders of the current team and whether that's a good thing at this juncture of him only have being stepped away for a brief time. But it's very interesting and he's clearly having some sort of positive impact because they've ramped it up so quickly.
Yeah. When he was talking about it back in November, I think it was now, give or take, there were a couple of reasons he was given as to why he wasn't going near coaching. So one of them was job security. It's like, I've got a great job here. I've got a young family, coaching, precarious. So that's looming large in my mind. And also he said something interesting where we were sort of more thinking, would it be Leinster as opposed to Ireland actually? But he was saying, well, look, if I was to go in as a coach to Leinster, all I have really is my Leinster schooling. I would need to go and spend a year like O'Gara did with the Crusaders or go to France or pick up something new, go to South Africa because like they don't need me. And he was using the example of when Leo Cullen was saying to him, Issa Nasewa would be great to get on the coaching ticket. And Johnny said, look, I love Issa. Would he? What's he going to bring? He's going to bring more of the same. So it's you know, that was a big barrier in his mind. Now maybe with the Ireland job, that gives him flexibility to go and spend the month with the Crusaders or a month here or there or upskill in that kind of way. Because he basically said there's not a chance I'm dragging my kids around the world. We're Dublin based, they're at school, that's how it's going to be. So that's why Leinster just doesn't work. But maybe Ireland does give him a chance to go and spend a month with, or even just a week or two with Golden State Warriors. Who knows? But maybe it's a better fit than full-time Leinster straight away, which he felt would not be good for Leinster as much as for him.
Yeah, well, it is curious. Like, the Ronan O'Gara path is often referred to. Like, he spent 6 seasons as an assistant. You know, he went to Racing, then he went to the Crusaders, and then he went in under John O'Gibbs as a head coach, with Gibbs being the director of rugby initially at La Rochelle. Fairly significant seasoning. Even Paul O'Connell spent a year with Stade Francais, then went in with the Ireland underage setup, and then progressed as an assistant coach. Like, Johnny Sexton's going straight into the highest profile job, or sorry, obviously not the head coach, but sorry, you know, coaching environment at a time when the team is at a bit of a crossroads. So if you know, if things don't go well initially, people will say, well, is this the right appointment? Like a guy who has no coaching experience.
It's a stellar rise. Finn Russell woke up feeling a little bit gloomy this morning. My God. So this is the London Times. Alex Lowe, around the time he was promoting his book, naturally asked about Lions selections then. Who would you pick? Obviously nobody predicting this would all happen. And so who would you pick at 10 was a question people asked of Sexton. I'd pick Owen Farrell. Who do you want in there when the going gets tough, he said. Test match animals. I know who the media would want, he said. Finn Russell, Marcus Smith, the flashy types. And then he sort of backtracked on Smith. He said, Marcus, to be fair, I think is a generational talent. Didn't backtrack on Finn Russell. He said of Smith, he looks flashy, but I think he manages the game really well. I think he can light up a game. No backtrack on Finn Russell. But for me, I'd like Owen. He can do some remarkable things.
But how much, like, I suppose, I'm sure that there's no definitive answer, but how much does a coach get when it comes down to team selection? Like, if he's told by Andy Farrell, look, I'm going with Finn Russell as the test 10, you need to coach him in such a way that he's ready for whatever you think he needs to be ready for.
Do what he's told. I'd say if the generational number 10 of his generation is telling you that your son should play as the Lions number 10, you probably accept that.
That's a very, very persuasive way of framing that one, Joe.
Andy Farrell now.
I'm going to go with that. If Johnny says it. My hands are tied.
He has sufficient cover now to pick on, and they can be like, "Look, Johnny Sexton said it. He's the assistant. I empower my assistants to give their opinions, and they reached the conclusion that my son is the best man for the job."
Finn Russell this morning. What the fuck? Rieko Ioane has agreed a 7-month contract with Leinster. Do they just get an All Black now? Is that how this works?
Placing the All Blacks 12 with the All Blacks 13 is certainly an interesting
joke.
It is a bit though, is it?
It's a lot, yeah. 7-month deal. He'll basically play for New Zealand against Ireland in Chicago and then fly in for the Champions Cup season. Reckoned in New Zealand, the reports are $250,000 for his stint here. Like I said, he'll be at Soldier Field and then he'll be with Leinster. Again, Johnny Sexton, just connected to everything. Don't miss your flight home. Enjoy tomorrow and enjoy retirement, you see. Sexton went on to write, so much for the All Blacks' famous no dickhead policy. Then, in response to that, Ioane led the haka when the All Blacks played at the Aviva. I mean, who will we get to lead the haka? And he then posted a picture after they beat Ireland that November saying, put that in the book. And now in he comes. Sexton's always just close to some kind of soap opera, isn't he?
Yeah, it was great social media trolling by Ioane, but I lost a bit of respect for him because when he was actually in a press conference, he didn't give not a peep out of him about any banter or anything. It was very, oh shucks, I'm an All Black. And then immediately after the game, while being very funny, he didn't have the guts to actually have a bit of fun in the press conference himself. But I don't think that part of it is a big deal. Like Tana Umaga joining in 2006, that would have been a villain coming to town. Whereas this bit of back and forth, I don't think it's a big deal.
28 years of age, so at his peak.
Yep.
All Blacks debut at 19, 81 caps, 37 tries. Can play centre and wing. More of a, what would you say, like a strike runner than some kind, Barrett's this all-rounder, playmaking, can do everything. This guy's more of a, he's going to cut lines. Will he play centre or wing?
No, I'd expect he plays in the wing. Okay. I think the team, I think this signing is arguably... Sorry, Jordy Barrett's been unbelievable. But if you say before Barrett arrived, if you were asking like which one of them would you prefer, you would probably have said, oh, well, Ioane might actually slot in better with what Leinster already have. Maybe put Ioane on the right wing, Lowe on the left wing. Like he started his test career on the wing and was lethal. Like this was probably going back, as you said, when he was a teenager in his early 20s. But I've never found 13 to maybe be his best position because I think a lot of the attributes he brings to 13 are actually really good on the wing as well. Whereas Barrett, as we saw against Glasgow, an all-action player like Ioane would not have been able to give the performance Barrett did last Friday night. But by the same token, Ioane has pace and a bit of power that maybe Barrett doesn't have as well. Deploying him on the wing is probably the best use of that. But interesting, the day after they announced the kind of latest central contracting tweak, that this move, and it just shows the shift in policy now, like this kind of new picking up the best player available policy is here to stay, because for probably 6 or 7 years it was Michael Alatoa, Charlie Natai, Joe Tamani, guys who were kind of there to fill holes, whereas these guys are there to punch holes and make things happen. And like Leinster have never won a Champions Cup without marquee signings. Like in 2018 they had Scott Fardy, and it's worth remembering James Lowe was the marquee signing back then. He is now considered, I guess, Irish, but he was the big money signing from New Zealand back then. So certainly eye-catching, interesting. It's at a time when other provinces are having to make tough decisions, but the central contracting thing, I guess, was a move towards rebalancing that. But in the medium term, there's no sign that Leinster are letting up with this kind of pushing forward with this policy.
It's a good point about the marquee signing. This is back to the tradition of Elsom and Brad Thorne and winning those European Cups. We should mention, this is awful news. Erin King, 21 years of age, has become a bit of a superstar in that brilliant Irish back row. She is not just going to miss the Six Nations now, she's going to miss the World Cup later this year. Knee injury against England in Cork. Was the World Rugby Women's 15's Breakthrough Player of the Year last year. 21 years of age. Such a pity. They play Wales and Scotland, obviously, rounds 4 and 5. We're going to do deep dive on the Women's Six Nations campaign next week. She simply said, I'm heartbroken, and I'll bet she is. So that is a gut punch for Ireland, to say the least. We'll come back to that next week in a bit more detail. All our rugby coverage with thanks to Energia. Conor, come back in the room. Just before we talk about your week that was, there's the football. I haven't mentioned much football this week. Premier League's kind of struggling to offer much, but 2 out of 3 ain't bad for Liverpool. Virgil van Dijk has followed Mo Salah and signed a 2-year deal. So I reckon Salah got a major bump in pay. Van Dijk has been exceptional this year, there's no doubt. He's 34 in July. He's on 220 sterling a week. Do you think he gets a bump? Probably does a little bit.
I think any new deal probably comes with
Small.
some bump, but probably not to the extent of Salah. Salah's having arguably his best ever season, or was until the last couple of weeks, whereas Van Dijk, while playing really well, probably the same level he's been at.
Yeah.
These are the contract renewals that I think send a shiver down the spine of the director of finance or whoever they are in football clubs, because obviously economically they don't make any sense.
No.
You are signing a player up to a huge contract at a period in their career when the only logical place for them is to go is down. And in a lot of celebrated cases, the signing of the contract has actually expedited the kind of tip over the hill. So as much as the fans will celebrate it, and rightfully so, because like, wow, two incredible players in this era for Liverpool, I'm sure there are certain people that had to do it through gritted teeth.
Yeah, I agree with you. Arsenal last night, through to the semi-final, Champions League. We're down to 4, so Arsenal will play PSG, Inter will play Barcelona. Inter beat Bayern, Barcelona took care of Dortmund, and PSG obviously Villa. So this is kind of a famous night now. 2-1 win at the Bernabeu, 5-1 aggregate. Carlo Ancelotti is for the chop. Xabi Alonso apparently set to come in. Madrid were very disappointing, weren't they? It's like all the kind of shambolic aspects of their empire over the last couple of years really came home to roost. You know, just bad in midfield, ill-disciplined, slight. You know, the scales are just gone back a little bit too into the Galactico realm for me. And then Arsenal, very, very good. I'm kind of happy for Arsenal in many ways.
Well, if you'd have told Arsenal fans at the start of the season that they would hammer Real Madrid over 2 legs 5-1 with Jakub Kiwior playing and Mikel Merino as a makeshift striker and Miles Lewis-Skelly as the left back, they would have laughed you out of town. So it goes to show you what a good job they've kind of made of making do, or sort of thinking their way out of the problems that they've had with injury, that they're here. And like, I don't know, but they look as likely as any of the other three to keep going.
PSG is so tasty. PSG, the most impressive team in the competition.
Second half against Villa wasn't that impressive.
Fair point. Yeah. Okay.
Just on Madrid, though, you mentioned like watching them last night. Their last 5 seasons, 2021, they get eliminated by a mediocre enough Chelsea team, Zidane departs. 2022, win the Champions League. 23, get destroyed by Man City. Looks like end of an era. 2024, win the Champions League again. 2025, destroyed by Arsenal.
Okay.
2026, Alonso in, Trent Alexander-Arnold in, maybe another reboot and rebuild coming, and probably another Champions League.
Yeah. That's in 2 weeks' time. London first against PSG. Just one other bit of news. This is an exclusive. Dan McDonald had this back page of the paper today, broke last night. You could, if you're only following casually, look at Shamrock Rovers and think, well, there's a well-run happy camp. It's not. And it hasn't been for a long time. Dan wrote a piece even a year, 18 months ago about the various factions behind the scenes, and they're pretty much at war. So Dermot Desmond, you know, kind of keeps a low enough profile, has written a letter, an explosive letter, Dan says, open letter to Hoops members, claiming that the fan-elected non-executive directors of the club have been persistently seeking to have Stephen Bradley replaced. So basically the Rovers ownership is Desmond has 25%, Ray Wilson, who's based in Australia, businessman, 25%, and then fans hold the other 50%, the 400 club. And so they have representatives on the board. And it's not a happy family. And the CEO, John Martin, is leaving. Desmond said his position intolerable, and he's pointing the finger at the fan contingent of the ownership, basically saying it's all your fault, and they want Stephen Bradley replaced. I'm not sure why they would. They've denied that. Then Dan was speaking to them. It's all very messy. We're going to talk to Dan next week. There's games Friday and Monday, so we'll do a piece on this next week. But that's the back page splash this morning about Shamrock Rovers not happy. Okay, I got through that quickly for you. I got through that really quickly.
Thanks, so.
We've been waiting for this.
Come on. Where were you on 18 when he missed the putt?
So on 18 when he missed the putt, I was looking directly at Rory McIlroy. So if you're looking at the 18th green, I was off to the left. So he was putting towards me. I could see the side of his head and I could see his hands on the putter. And then I heard the groans from the crowd before I saw Rory's reaction. And at that stage, I had to go back to the press centre and started to rewrite stuff because I had about 5 pieces on the go. I had the
Had you not pre-written your "He's a Choker" piece?
well, there was elements of all kinds of stuff. At one stage, he was cruising to the greatest major victory of all time, and then it became all kinds of everything. So we were in and out.
Can I ask? Because I've been to quite a few opens and lots of Irish opens. Irish Open, the access is amazing. You can walk between the ropes 5 feet from McIlroy. The Open, less if you're a broadcast non-rights holder. You're kind of you're slumming it out with the thousands trying to get a 10 deep, get a view. But at the Open, the writers get a inside the ropes thing. So that's a pretty good deal. At Augusta, very famously, it's pristine. There's not a pack of journalists walking inside the ropes. So are you just out there?
You're in with the great unwashed, yeah.
Trying to get a view like everybody else? I wasn't sure of that.
Even like Radar was there. Like he's outside the ropes as well with his earpiece, like surrounded by...
Dottie Pepper's inside.
Dottie's the only one that's allowed inside, yeah.
Radar's outside?
He's outside the ropes, yeah. It's only their subsidiary rights holders, so they don't get the same access. So Dottie is literally the only person who's allowed inside the ropes.
Because it was Dottie, he very famously, when he hit that miraculous shot through the trees, he bowed to.
Yeah.
And they had a very nice hug, actually. I mean, she's walked a lot of fairways with McIlroy.
Yeah.
I didn't realise Sky were out there.
Yeah, it's the same thing. Now, there are a couple of vantage points where they have like rows at the back of a couple of the galleries that are reserved for media. So you can get to them. And being a grizzled old hand of Augusta now... Because last year I found myself inevitably being in the wrong place, whereas this year, by Saturday, I was able to plot around the course and take the right kind of skip forwards and stand the right side of the fairways to see what I wanted to see.
Well, it's a tournament that rewards experience.
Yeah,
as you know.
But I took a decision on Saturday. I kind of had a blank canvas as to what I was going to do. I went out to see the start of Rory's round, and he went birdie, eagle, birdie. So I quickly made the decision, I'm going to watch every shot of this round and do it from a hole-by-hole, first-person perspective. So I was just about able to do that.
And so did you stay in the press centre for the playoff then?
No, I came back out then. So I went back in, did a small bit. Then when he hit the wedge, I said, right, I have to go out and see this. Okay. And from leaving your desk to coming out where the 18 green is, like you're there in less than sort of 90 seconds. So I was able to get back then. But it was a moment. It was definitely a moment. And, the Irish angle to this is something that, we're all kind of part of. But I spent a lot of time with other journalists, naturally enough, and they are all far more experienced than I am. And even one of the Green Jackets said it as well, that they'd never seen crowds like it on a Sunday at the Masters, even going back to Tiger, because a lot of people, what they do on Sundays is they take up a perch, they get one of those seats on the side of the 15th or the back of 3 and just let the Masters go by and watch it. But in terms of the number of people who gravitated towards the final group, they had never seen anything like it at the Masters, which goes to show you how big. And you can see it, like the figures came out for the live TV from Sky and from CBS as well, and they're off the charts, really, So it like, in as much as it's hard to get a full sense of, because we were invested from the national angle, in terms of a world sporting event, in as high as golf can score on that, it was right up there as well.
Just on the TV viewing figures, I was flabbergasted to see that it was the biggest viewing figures on CBS for a Masters since, do you know what year it was?
Was it Tiger in
2018? Patrick Reed, for some reason, drew more than this.
Oh, that was when Rory was in the last group.
Yeah, but I just found that hard to believe. So Rory the weekend drew more than Tiger in 2019, but not as much as Patrick Reed winning in 2018.
Strange. Maybe the Woods early finish hurt the viewing figures.
And I just think it's just a decline in TV watching generally must account for some of that. I thought it was going to be like the biggest since 97 or something like that. Obviously, maybe not that big, but yeah, I was just surprised that it wasn't quite as far back as I anticipated.
No, it was a mad thing to be there at, and it was one of those things that you got a fair sense that when you were watching it in the flesh, that what you were watching was going to be. Like, the thing about Augusta is it's so sort of vivid that when you get there and you're shown all the images and all the footage of the Tiger and Jack Nicklaus and all those amazing moments that are down in kind of golf folklore, it's part of the tapestry of the history of golf. And we knew watching it that they'll show this round of golf forever. You kind of knew that it was just a case of whether he was going to do it or he wasn't. And it was such a mad round of golf from Rory's perspective that when he missed the putt on 18 to win it, you were almost numb by then. You know, there was no great because you'd done the after the first hole, and you'd done it after the 13th, and you'd done it when he'd missed a couple of birdie putts as well that you thought he was going to put home. So it got to the stage where you had no more kind of deflation to put into it, and it was just a case of. But what made it the most remarkable thing that I've ever seen was that by playing those poor shots, it meant that he had to play some of the greatest shots that he ever played. Like, there's so little airtime that I've heard anyway, given to how well he played the 18th in that playoff. I saw his drive pitch, and it pitched well past the divot that he had for when he played his shot in the first time. So to produce that drive in the playoff, having bogeyed 18, and to stick his wedge that close was incredible. And it was the same with the shot in on 15. Obviously, the mistake on 13 necessitated that. But he had, and the iron that he hit into 17 as well, you know, at a stage where he was looking at the leaderboard, realised he had to birdie one of the 2 remaining holes, and to put a 3-wood up there and hit it up into the rafters, and for it to come down and land so softly. I was only saying to Will, I actually only watched it back on television yesterday for the first time since I got home, and you get a different perspective when you kind of see it. But everybody was so invested in the one thing. It was the only time I've been at a golf tournament where there was such a singular focus on one issue. And you got that sense going around. And even waking up on the Monday morning, you were kind of thinking, we've seen something amazing here. And I got a piece written for the next day, a kind of a follow-up. And I kind of pledged to myself, look, that's it. You don't want to be the guy who comes home and won't stop talking about the Masters that he was at. And I got to the airport, and I was settling in for something to eat. And 2 guys came over and introduced themselves, and they said, we've just sent an email into the podcast, and you actually read it out there the other day.
Oh, those guys.
They had just sent the email.
Dara.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful email.
Yeah. They came over, and so we were sitting there yapping for about an hour before the flight, and then I got into the queue for the flight, and Harry Diamond was standing beside me. He was on the same flight home. Oh. And then I sat down on the plane, and the guy who was sitting beside me was reading one of the pieces that was in the paper. So you kind of got a good sense that maybe this would resonate a fair bit beyond your spin home.
You were at the centre point. It's been so big, you know it has. It's funny you say that about the 18th when he missed that putt, because that you were numb at that stage. I had a slightly different experience, and I sort of misanswered Conan yesterday or the other day in bits and bobs when he's like, how excited were you during it? And I think what I should have led with was, I always sort of felt once he got over the wobble at the start that he was going to win. Even on 13, I felt, he's got 15. I had a nagging sense he was going to win. And the first time I really thought he was going to lose was when he missed that putt on 18.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know why, maybe I was deluded, but that was the first time I thought, oh my God, he's going to lose. And the reality of that suddenly hit me like a ton of... So on 18, it was the first time I thought, oh, fuck, Jesus, this is going to be the all-time worst.
Yeah.
And then, as you said, he played the playoff hole so well, and Harrington gave a great analysis of, we all know about the wedge play and that sawn-off finish, but Harrington talked about this new drive that he's discovered, this low fade cut, and that was very handy on 18.
Yeah, I think if you look at the percentage of, you know, the number of birdies that are made on 18 last week, I don't know the exact figures, but like for Rory to go out and do it in that situation, playing after Justin Rose as well, who had left himself a pretty tasty putt for a birdie. So like, he was forcing his hand. And this is the thing about Rory. When he's forced into the high tariff stuff, invariably he can do it. And when he tries to mind his lead, and that's, I suppose, the big question about what this big effect is going to have on Rory. But, you know, the next time he's 3 shots ahead of in a major and he's faced with a situation on 13, he's going to put it on the green and get an eagle and win by 6.
You would hope so.
And, you know, and that has to be, because you could sense the relief. It was, you know, I know we all pick our sports people that we like and we don't like, and we imagine grudges against, but like, to see him on Sunday, I can't remember seeing definitely a golfer react like that to win a major. It was raw emotion. It was relief, and it was interesting just to watch him all week, because he made 3 visits to the press centre before his winning press conference. He did one on Tuesday, a pre-tournament one, and then they bring over the kind of the leaders after each day. So he was in on Friday and Saturday. And for a fella who's very good in these situations, he was quite happy to talk about his round. He was quite happy to talk about his game. He was quite happy to talk about the books he was reading and the TV programs he was watching. But it was obvious from early in the week that he wouldn't talk about things that had happened in the past.
It was the least cooperative I'd ever seen him. in a press setting.
Wouldn't go there.
Yeah.
He didn't want to know. He wouldn't tell you about Scotty Scheffler or Bryson DeChambeau. He almost insulted Gary Player and Jack Nicklaus and Tom Watson when it was put to him that the three of them had predicted he would win the Masters, and he said, well, those three guys are getting old. But he just didn't want all that pressure, and it was very obvious it was all about himself, and it was about nothing else. And it was an interesting approach from Rory, because usually once he gets there, it's kind of, fair game. He'll talk about anything you want.
Can I ask you a sports media question, a self-indulgent sports media
lovely,
question? Because I asked you when you were in Bits and Bobs, Joe was off at this stage when you were talking about going to the Masters, and I said about, riding the Rory piece if he was to win. And how, would you feel any pressure or any nerves or anything like that? Just because it's like the biggest sporting event you've probably covered, I'd say. I know Dublin winning 5 in a row was probably peak at the time. But how long did you think about what you were writing? When did you write the guts of it? Because it was a good piece.
I was writing it as I was going along, because some of that stuff was about what the feeling was around Augusta that morning, and that was obviously that would have gone in the piece no matter what happened in the outcome. But then it was I suppose that was a pretty genuine sort of a piece. It was
your reaction.
We were all very sort of infused with the energy that the whole thing had created. Honestly, there was a couple of people, American journalists, who were sitting near me, who have no direct connection to Ireland or Rory McIlroy, and they were saying to each other, "This is the biggest story you're ever going to cover."
Yeah.
So we were all sort of hugely aware of that at the time, and it kind of writes itself. Do you know what I mean?
What'll I write about here?
What's
the angle into this?
Well, no, I don't think anyone else that I read said, "Rory, you mad sadistic bastard."
Well, there was an element of that as well, because you're just looking at it going, who lays up on a lays up on a par 5, and probably that decision was made on the tee when you took out the 3-wood. But I'm sure if you asked Rory, and he had enough time to go back through them and ask him, what's the worst ever shot you've hit as a professional? That wedge shot into 13 would have to rank up there, just because it was I'd certainly fancy my own chances of hitting the green from there.
Not under that pressure, you wouldn't.
But he'd taken the pressure away. And then he had twice the pressure 2 holes later, and he hit a 230-yard 4-iron with 30 feet of bend on it.
Yeah.
So that's that's what made the whole thing so compelling. Because just when you thought this guy is properly cracking now, and that's what made so obviously he was feeling pressure. Obviously it was making him execute poor shots, whatever about poor judgment. But to execute those really high tariff shots under more pressure because he put himself under it in the first place, that to me is the thing that will sort of linger forever, the thing that you remember most. All that stuff about the career Grand Slam, the Masters, 11 years, green jacket, blah, blah, that writes itself. It exists. But it's how he did it was the thing that really I found exhilarating.
Yeah. No, it's so dense with talking points, and it is hard to reconcile how risk averse he was on 13. Sorry, it's not difficult to reconcile. It's understandable, but so risk averse on 13. But then on 15 and on 17, he played them with such abandon. As in, Harrington made the point on 15. Yeah, look, okay, the 40-yard sling hook, they can all sort of do that. The thing you have to note about him on 15 is how close he landed that to the water.
Just over the...
Yeah, so Harrington's point is he can play the sling hook, no problem. They can all do that. He could have taken an extra club and gone over the back of the green.
Yeah.
Because he would have said to himself, well, I can't go in the water at the front. Whereas the sadistic, whatever you want to call it, the balls on him,
that's the thing.
To risk going in the water front. And then can you imagine the headlines? And equally on 17, Harrington again said, he played that hole in a way very few can, because he left himself 180, 190. And he's good enough that he can rip an 8-iron that far. But nobody else played the hole that way. Him and Bryson are the only ones. He said Rose couldn't play the hole that way. So there was the complete paralysis with nerves of 13 versus the risky, you crazy, you're going to pull that shot off of 15 and 17.
And what made it a great week as well was that he was such a brilliant story. Honestly, on Thursday, I was staying with 3 other journalists over there, and on Thursday night, only one of them was Irish.
Who's the third? We're not staying with Paul and Brian.
No, Brian wasn't. He was in a different combination. It was with an American journalist called Alex McKelly and Martin Dempster from The Scotsman. We were having a glass of wine on Thursday night, and honestly, it was like, I can't believe that this is over. You know, like Brandel Chambly's appearance on this podcast last week was still in my head, and one of the stats was nobody who has not broken par on the Thursday has won the Masters since Tiger in 2005.
I haven't checked the 4 double bogeys stat either. I suspect he's broken that one too.
Yeah, he has. But that was fresh in our mind, and Rory, after playing so well on Thursday for 16 holes, in a position where he looked like the best golfer in the field, was now 5 shots back and hadn't broken par. And all of that sort of stuff. And he'd stormed off. He didn't do any press conference. He didn't come out and talk. And we honestly thought it was done and dusted. And from Friday on, it was utterly compelling.
Yeah. Do you want an email or two? So many emails in. I won't get to many of them. So, here's a general theme of like, this really was so good, which is just, a lot of people just emailed in to say this was just so good. So here's one on that theme. Connor says, last few days have shown us a lot of different things. First and foremost, sport is incredible in how it brings people together, sucks people in. I was talking to people in the aftermath who I didn't think were into golf, but they were glued. I wasn't around for Italia 90, but it definitely had the feeling of a nation hold its breath when Rory stepped up for that final putt. Although it sounds strange, the biggest compliment you can almost give it is that it was unwatchable. There's no real overall point to this email other than just explaining how it felt to watch it all unfold. In my opinion, it was the biggest and best sporting event I've ever watched. Rory's reaction on 18, the subsequent cinematic walk to the clubhouse topped it off. There's been a lot of talk about how many more majors he gets. I wouldn't be surprised if he wins 2 more this year. I think he reaches 10 in total. The burden has been lifted. Roll on, Portrush. I'll be there on Sunday.
It's funny, that's like almost word for word my thoughts and what I think of what I said on Tuesday. It's like I agree with that guy, Conor, wholeheartedly.
I'm doing a piece for Saturday, just I've been asked to do a thing about like what it was like to be at one of Ireland's greatest sporting moments. And there's probably 2 different gauges here, like Ireland's greatest sporting moment, greatest sporting achievement. And they're subtly different. But like the moment was incredible because of the drama that it created. And like listening to some of the emails that you got the other day, people saying, well, isn't it a bit of a shame that the last 11 years were kind of wasted? But the last 11 years made the moment what it was.
Can I hit you there?
Yes.
Danny. Thanks for all the Masters content. Top. Especially Dermot Leese. Question re the emailer the other day who mentioned his sadness that he felt post Rory's win and the feelings of what could have been over the last decade. I had a similar thought initially, but I think the ups and downs over the last 10 years have really humanised him in the eyes of many fans, resulting in him being a beloved figure in golf. And I wonder if the golfing world and Irish people in general would have had the same graw for him had he not suffered all the challenges he's had to face over the last decade. He hasn't always had such strong support. Certainly when he first came on the scene, he was often subjected to a bit of the tall poppy syndrome. So I was wondering now that he's won it, maybe the last 10-year hiatus has been a net positive. Cheers, Danny.
Yeah, well, I mentioned that in a piece that I wrote that in 2014, I would have been a little bit ambivalent about Rory McIlroy because he was almost too successful, too talented, too rich. And, you know, people like that, while they're great to watch, you might not necessarily naturally invest in them emotionally. But all that had happened over the last 11 years and how he has handled himself and put himself out there has made him a very attractive person to kind of follow and get behind. It's just a natural thing.
Yeah. I did see someone tweet, how has this fella become lovable underdog? Rory McIlroy.
But it's that point of the last 11 years led to that moment. And I don't know how many times we've been in here talking about it. Like a lot of people, I fancied him for a major this year because he had improved his game. But the idea that he went and did it at Augusta with the Grand Slam riding on it and all the kind of ghosts of Masters past lurking in the pines, that was almost too perfect.
The whole thing is just too good. It can't ever be topped.
I find
the 11-year aspect to it. It just can't be.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Had he kept winning majors after 2014, there's no way he would have elicited the outpouring. If he had won the Masters in 2016, I don't think it would have been not even half, wouldn't have been 10% of what we saw the other day.
Yeah.
But I find they criticise things about him, how successful he was then, as being a stick to beat him with, or why he wouldn't be as because he's so rich or so famous. Like there's every athlete that's playing at the Masters.
But I just mean
Shane Lowry is obscenely wealthy as well. I don't think just because Rory has more money than them, it makes him a less compelling figure. Because I've heard people say that as well.
No, it's just about your feelings. Like our affiliations come down to our feelings in a lot of cases, And there was something almost superhuman, like extraterrestrial, about how good Rory looked. Like the year in Congressional when he was 21 years of age and he blitzes the US Open, the hardest tournament around by 10 shots.
The major that was after the Masters as well.
Yeah, and like that was just...
He wasn't the most relatable. He was supernova talented.
Yeah.
So, but now I'm at a point where, like, geez, I'd ache for him because of all the frailties. It was hard in 2014 to kind of... I don't know. He felt like interstellar. He just was superhuman, and you'd bask in it, but it was all too easy.
Yeah,
it was too easy,
and you expected it to win as well. Like it became a thing where, the chances are Rory is going to win this tournament, as opposed to what it became over the last 10, 11 years, and all that disappointment and heartbreak and everything else. It's hugely sort of compelling, like in its own way.
Sorry, a part of me, 1%, and don't twist this. A part of me was like, I could have waited another 5-6 years for this.
Oh God!
I'd have taken another 5-6. It just would have
only been 11.
The intensity of the will he won't he just would have ramped up to like a delicious amount.
I just wonder at some stage whether Rory McIlroy is going to get the greatest sort of come down of all time, knowing that the greatest moment in his career has just happened.
I think that's a really, really interesting question. Yeah.
Like what's ever going to top it? If he gets to 19 majors, maybe you can say that.
Yeah.
But that place, I got new kind of love for Augusta being there, because last year I went on Wednesday and it's a bit too tight to the tournament, and I was already sort of anxious about what I'd do work-wise. And whereas this year I got there much earlier and had a bit of a free rein, and I spent more time kind of walking around, and you can understand why it means so much to the golfers there. It's a really, really special place, and you can imagine for Rory, you can see why it gets into their heads in a bad way, and you can see why they value winning it there so much.
Yeah. Well, I guess the only way you can top it is to win at Quail Hollow, Oakmont and Portrush. That is a now or never moment.
Well, having said that, he'll never top Augusta. If he does go to Portrush, a homecoming, no matter what happens in the next two majors,
fair, and wins.
If he goes there, having won in Quail Hollow and Oakmont, and the calendar Grand Slam is on.
Yeah, stop. I hate it. Listen to us. Yeah, ridiculous. Somebody else emailed, there's another thing down for Aina says, I won't read out your full email, Aina, if that's okay, but the gist of it was, just to point out, if he wins an Olympic gold, then he's the only player in history who'll have done the Golden Slam. That's a tennis parlance if you win the Olympic gold and the 4 Grand Slams. Rory would be the only player. Because of course it wasn't in the Olympics for a long time. Do you want a nice kind of heart warmer?
Yeah.
Hi Joe, long time, first time Cetra. I'm sure I've missed the Masters boat and the email craze, but I'm sitting here with a belly full of McDonald's thanks to Rory McIlroy. Again, strong opener. As a huge golf Rory fan, I sat down on Thursday evening to watch him, and it quickly became apparent I was facing a weekend-long battle over the TV rights with my 6-year-old and 3-year-old sons, who thought Paddington Bear was a more worthwhile watch. I was left with no other option but to resort to Parenting 101. I told them, if Rory wins the Masters, I'll bring you to McDonald's on Monday evening. What followed was a lovely 4 long evenings spent watching golf, before and after bedtimes, and much to my surprise, it was the first occasion, bar maybe the Olympics, they actually sat down with me and watched the sport uninterrupted for extended periods of time, with genuine interest. The whole family gathered on Sunday evening for the culmination. Destiny awaited Rory. I let them stay up well past their bedtime to get his front nine in. I was awoken the next morning, bright and early, by 2 smiling faces at my bedside, wondering if McIlroy had got the job done. I was glad to confirm he had. The 3 of us trotted off to McDonald's this evening for a well-earned celebration, and it's one more reason I'll never forget Rory's Grand Slam. The best part, though, is my eldest, for whom I bought his first pitching wedge last summer but couldn't get him to use it, and I now have our first trip to the driving range planned this week. Hopefully it's the first step towards many years of happy golfing with my 2 boys, all for the small price of 11 years of Rory's tournament and 2 Happy Meals. Keep up the stellar work, Tommy.
Well, how was your experience of watching the Masters, Joe?
Great.
Given your rapidly expanding home life.
Yeah, good. I mean, kids tucked away.
Okay.
To be fair, the newborn was a bit unsettled on the front nine.
Once he hit a couple of fairways, he was
Like a lot of people.
And I did turn to my, very fair and understanding other half, and I said, he's sort of ruining this for me. And she was good enough to say, do you know what? I'm going to take him out there.
So what time? So the winning putt was what, like 12:30 or something?
Yeah. I like at that stage I'm alone, and
Yeah. Oh, well, that's okay.
the way I like to watch sport
Yeah.
on my own, the TV volume audible at all times, watching.
And then what happens? Do you just you just go to bed afterwards?
I put on the Masters app,
Okay.
and I got into bed and listened to his press conference, which they were playing,
Very good.
and I was just really happy for him.
Yeah. I was at Scotty Scheffler's Masters winning press conference last year, and I don't recall him being applauded into the room, whereas Rory was this. I don't know whether that's a kind of a standard greeting for the Masters champion, but it kind of started from the back of the room, and it became a kind of a, I don't know, like it was kind of a salute to all that he had done or all that he'd overcome.
Salute to fans with typewriters.
Bit touch of that, yeah.
Yeah. I was at the one Mickelson won in 13, and I was very surprised. I think it's a nice, like golfers have a pretty good relationship with the press, I think, in the main. And I was very surprised at the end. I was kind of young. I was, well, what's the relationship? And there was great warmth for Mickelson, and it was a big win for him, obviously, because they thought he'd never win the Open. And after the press conference, it wasn't like he invited anyone up. I don't know how it started, but all the journalists took off their accreditation laminated passes and got in a nice orderly queue, and Phil signed every single one of them.
Really, yeah.
Yeah. So I've got me and the Phil Mickelson signed in
you got
2013.
yours signed?
Well, I was like, if everyone else is doing it,
That's inappropriate.
I'll get the queue.
That is inappropriate.
If it makes you feel better, I've lost it since.
It does, actually.
Yeah, I don't know where it is. But I was like, is this how it is? I've never seen that happen at the other post major win since.
Yeah.
But somebody just seemed to start it, and Phil just kind of
Yeah.
sign.
Rory, like he had the room in the palm of his hand then in that press conference, because these were the same people that were trying to elicit the kind of salacious answers earlier in the week of show us your wounds, Rory, and relive your heartache, so we can kind of embellish the feature that we're writing about why you're not going to win it. But he was very honest about everything that he felt afterwards.
I was great. Yeah, it's worth a watch. I loved when Eamon Lynch asked him at Harry Diamond, and he got choked up mid-question.
Yeah.
And then he went, Eamon. Did you get a goodie bag?
How do you mean?
Like when you arrived, do you get a little media bag? What's in it? Don't say my shitty ball marker.
No, no. No, that was...
Paid for it. Sorry, I'm so ungracious. I'm going to use it every time I play forever.
What's there's a water bottle that because you can fill it up around the course.
Now, if you're not walking around the office with that thing forevermore,
there's an incredibly detailed and thorough media guide. There's just little kind of knickknacks. I think it's all kind of gotten mixed up with the stuff that I ultimately sort of bought while I was there as general Masters paraphernalia. I've fridge magnets and stuff like that I couldn't tell you whether they came in the pack or I ended up kind of queuing up for them. So
nice. We're pretty much done. Any other business? Anybody colour? Who's the most famous person you saw there outside of golfers?
Keith Duffy. Brian McFadden. Who's more famous, Brian McFadden or Keith Duffy?
Keith Duffy.
I did see they were there, all right. That boys' life thing. The algorithm seems to think I want to see this all the time, and they keep shooting it to me.
I'm being facetious, but it was one of those ones. I was walking down the side of the 6th on Saturday, and I turned around and was like, I'd wreck it. I was like, and then I kept walking, and it took me a minute. I was like, was that Keith Duffy? And it was, and they were at the Masters. But there were a lot of American football players there that I wouldn't recognise.
Did you see Michael Jordan?
No.
There was Niall Horan there?
I didn't see him, but I believe he was. See, again, if you're Michael Jordan and you go to the Masters, you still don't get to stand inside the ropes. So I can imagine for famous
appealing,
people...
Yeah, that's actually a good point.
Yeah, so for famous people now, it's a bit of a drag. The only thing is nobody has a phone, so they can't kind of annoy you for a selfie. So
well, that's an upside. The problem with the Open, of course, is the fans. I mean, they let so many people onto the course that it really is 10 deep. You can't see it. It's not a spectator sport, golf, obviously. Famously at Augusta, they don't overpopulate the course. So could you still get a reasonable view as you went around?
You had to be pretty crafty about it on the Sunday. Yeah.
Yeah. But on Thursday?
You could. Yeah. You could. But I suppose we were following. It was really handy on Saturday that Rory and Shane were only a group apart, So on Saturday, I hadn't made up my mind what to do. I watched Shane nearly holed his chip on one from the side of the green. And then I waited for Rory to come in and he sunk his putt. So I said, right, we'll follow this. And then he chipped in for eagle. Then it was like, okay, this is where it's at today. Because 4 holes into it, it looked like he was going to sort of go for a course record. So you wanted to make sure you laid your eyes on that as much as you could.
Yeah. Any other famous people?
There were. I remember texting somebody and telling somebody who I saw.
Jamie Dornan?
I didn't see him.
I don't know if he was there, but he would strike me as he might be.
Yeah.
Friends with Rory.
There was lots of... do you know who was standing right beside me? Was Greg Norman.
Was he?
Yeah.
Was he?
Yeah.
Love to know what he thought watching that final round.
100%.
Luke Donald as well, who was like...
Well, he's on Andy Farrell type.
Yeah, but it's mad to have him standing beside you.
That was a rugby one for you.
Yeah, he's going to pick his son.
Yeah.
It was mad to have him standing right beside me, craning his neck the same way I was to try and get a look at the putt, you know.
It's wonderfully egalitarian about golf.
Especially in Augusta.
Greg Norman.
I'd
I'd love to know what he was thinking.
Yeah, God, you'd love to interview Norman. All bets off, have a chat about things. Yeah. I mean, because he's who people point to when they talk about Rory now. Or until Sunday.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very good. Sounds awesome.
It was good.
You're lucky.
Yeah, it was good.
So good. Alrighty. That's Bits and Bobs. Ken Doherty is in your feed tomorrow. He's really, really good. Part 2 of the hurling chat with the boys in your feed today as well. Will, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Conor McKeon, nice one.
Thanks, Joe.